I've worked with hundreds of people, but only one made me walk away from everything I built. And to this day, I still can't forgive him.
For years, Aaron Kaufman kept his mouth shut. He built some of the most iconic cars on television, smiled for the cameras, and became the face of Gas Monkey Garage. Then, without much warning, he walked away.
My vacation from Gas Monkey is going to be a permanent one.
Fans assumed they knew why, but the real story didn't come out all at once. Piece by piece, Aaron began revealing what had really been happening behind the scenes, and it painted a very different picture from the one viewers thought they knew. What finally pushed him to leave? And what did he reveal after the cameras stopped rolling? Join us as we uncover the real reason Aaron Kaufman walked away from Gas Monkey Garage. The partnership nobody understood from the outside. Fast and Loud ran on Discovery Channel from June 2012 to 2020 across 16 seasons. And for the vast majority of that run, viewers operated under an assumption that Richard Rawlings and Aaron Kaufman were friends in the truest sense. Two guys who had built something remarkable together and genuinely enjoyed doing it. That assumption was exactly what the show wanted fans to have. The whole format depended on it. The push and pull between Richard's big swinging energy and Aaron's quiet intensity was the engine the show ran on. When they clashed on camera over deadlines or build choices, it read as the friction of close people who push each other. When they landed a spectacular result together, it felt like a shared triumph between men who had each other's backs. Almost none of that was real, and Aaron has been gradually, methodically, and with very little drama, making sure the record reflects that. The two men came together through a shared workspace and a business opportunity, not through friendship. Richard Rawlings had founded Gas Monkey Garage in Dallas in 2002 with a specific vision. He wanted to be on television. He wanted a famous hot rod shop. And he wanted the kind of national platform that turns a local business into a brand. Aaron, a gifted fabricator who had been building his reputation in the Dallas automotive scene, was recruited into that vision as the technical muscle. Richard himself was clear about what he brought and what he needed. He could sell, he could deal, he could perform. What he could not do was build cars the way Aaron could. What Aaron brought to that arrangement was irreplaceable. A deeply trained ability to take broken, forgotten, rusted-out classic vehicles and return them to glory. He could fabricate solutions that didn't exist yet. He could look at a wreck and reverse engineer exactly what it needed. He was the reason the builds were worth watching, and everyone involved understood that. What nobody discussed openly, at least not until Aaron started talking, was that the professional arrangement was the entire relationship, and it was fraying under its own weight from very early on. So why did it take 14 years for that to become public? And what was actually happening inside those walls that the cameras never showed? The person Aaron named. When Aaron began doing press for his post-Gas Monkey show Shifting Gears in 2018, he sat down with D Magazine for what should have been a routine profile. The interviewer pressed him on the Rawlings split, the departure that had genuinely rocked the automotive television world when it happened. Aaron was not particularly enthusiastic about the conversation. He made that clear, but what he said when pushed painted a portrait that no one who had watched the show was prepared for. The rapport between him and Richard, Aaron explained, was essentially gone. Not hostile exactly, just non-existent. They saw the world in fundamentally different ways. Aaron had come to understand what actually mattered in human relationships, and that understanding had made the distance between his values and Richard's impossible to ignore. That was Aaron being diplomatic. His old Crowley classmate, McMillan, who had come to help with builds at Gas Monkey Garage, specifically as a favor to Aaron, and had made it clear from day one that he worked for Aaron, not Richard, was considerably less diplomatic. His assessment of Richard Rawlings, delivered to the same magazine during the same piece, was 4 words that ricocheted across every automotive media outlet for months. Nobody had ever liked Richard. Nobody's ever liked him. It was a statement of established fact from someone who had been inside the garage and seen how things actually operated. That line became everything. It became YouTube video titles. It became the thing people referenced whenever they wanted to explain why Aaron had really left. It confirmed what a lot of people had suspected while watching the show, that the warmth between the 2 leads was performed rather than real, and that the environment Rawlings ran was considerably less fun for the people inside it than it appeared to be for the person whose name was on the door. But Aaron's real indictment wasn't the personal stuff. The personal stuff was almost incidental. What he was actually describing, carefully, specifically, over the course of multiple interviews and statements, was a professional environment that had been systematically destroying the thing that had brought him to this industry in the first place. And Richard Rawlings was the architect of that environment. So what was actually happening inside Gas Monkey Garage that made 14 years feel like 20? The machine that ate the work. Here is the part that the show never showed you, and it's the part Aaron kept returning to every time he tried to explain why the partnership collapsed. At its most intense periods, the Gas Monkey Garage crew was expected to complete roughly 12 builds every 6 months. 12 cars, finished to a sellable standard, in half a year. That math translates to over 100 hours of work per week per mechanic. And that's before you factor in the camera crew that was present for the bulk of those hours, which slowed everything down by requiring setups, retakes, producer check-ins, and the particular kind of performance pressure that comes from knowing that every frustration and every failure is being documented for broadcast. Aaron had come into the custom car world because he wanted to do complex, ambitious, technically demanding builds, the kind of work that required genuine innovation and couldn't be rushed without sacrificing integrity. He wanted to build things that pushed what was possible. The Pantera was the example he returned to repeatedly. A build that, given proper time and resources, could have been something extraordinary. On a fast and loud timeline, it became a logistical nightmare that produced something far below what the project deserved. The producers at Discovery Channel, watching the ratings and wanting more, kept pushing for bigger numbers and faster turnaround. The builds got smaller and more commercially convenient as a result. The work that Aaron lived for, the wild, ambitious, difficult projects, kept getting sacrificed on the altar of the production schedule. Every season that continued was another season of building cars at a pace that served the show's needs rather than the craft's requirements. Richard Rawlings was the person who had agreed to those terms. More than that, he was the person who had built the entire Gas Monkey operation around the logic that television visibility was the primary product, and the car builds were the vehicle for producing it. That was never Aaron's understanding of what they were doing. Aaron had always believed the cars were the point. Richard had always believed the show was the point. And for a while, those 2 different beliefs produced something that looked the same from the outside. Then, the gap between them became too wide to paper over. Aaron described the last 5 years of the partnership to anyone who asked as feeling like 20. 5 years of that particular grind, watching the work he cared about get compressed, simplified, and subordinated to production requirements he had never signed up for, had cost him something he could not fully articulate but absolutely felt. And the person responsible for designing that environment was Richard Rawlings, who built Gas Monkey Garage as a platform and was entirely comfortable treating it as one. So when Aaron finally walked, what did he say on the way out? And what did Rawlings' response reveal about both of them? The exit says everything about both men. When Season 12 of Fast and Loud aired the episode documenting Aaron's departure In early 2017, the way each man handled it was almost a perfect summary of who they were. Aaron told Richard on camera that he had some other things he wanted to get into. He was calm and deliberate. He referenced the last 5 years feeling like 20, which, if you pay attention, is a devastating thing to say directly to the person responsible for those 5 years. He wasn't performing grief or drama. He was informing Richard of a decision that had already been made, in the quiet tone of someone who had been thinking about it for a long time. Richard's public response, a blog post on the Gas Monkey Garage website that came out before the episode even aired, was a masterclass in perception management. He acknowledged it was a big hit to the garage. He insisted it had come completely out of left field, which was either untrue or suggested a spectacular lack of attention to what was happening around him. He pivoted immediately to reassuring the audience that Gas Monkey could continue without Aaron, that it was a team, that Aaron had helped build that team, and the team would carry on. What he did not address was the 14 years of context behind the departure, what Aaron had said specifically about those final 5 years, and also the substance of Aaron's dissatisfaction, the deadlines, the compromised builds, and the creative environment that had been narrowing year by year. He addressed the optics of the departure and left the reasons for it entirely untouched. That gap between what Aaron was saying and what Richard was willing to address publicly told the audience everything it needed to know about why the split had happened. One man was trying to explain what the experience had actually been. The other was managing the brand. They had been operating on those 2 different frequencies for years. The departure was just the moment it finally became visible. Fast and Loud continued for 4 more seasons after Aaron left. It ended in 2020. Almost nobody disputes that the show never found what it had lost when Aaron walked out. The ratings reflected it slowly, and then all at once, the way these things always go. And then there was the broader pattern at Gas Monkey Garage that Aaron's exit had only made more visible, because he was not remotely the only person who had left under circumstances that raised questions about the environment Rawlings created. So who else ended up on the wrong side of that door? The Gas Monkey pattern. One of the most telling things about Gas Monkey Garage over its run was not any single departure, but the cumulative picture that multiple departures painted. Aaron was the most famous exit. He was not close to the only one. Tom Smith and Jordan Butler were mechanics at Gas Monkey Garage who had a falling out with Rawlings that became public enough to spin into its own television show. After being fired, they joined forces with Thomas Weeks and Scott McMillan to open a rival shop called Fired Up Garage. Discovery Channel filmed the whole thing and called the resulting show Misfit Garage, which ran for 6 seasons from 2014 to 2018. The premise, former Gas Monkey people trying to compete with their former employer, was good enough for 6 seasons of content. The discovery that the same network was filming both the Gas Monkey operation and the operation started by people Rawlings had fired is the kind of irony that writes itself. Discovery Channel was essentially documenting both sides of the same professional rupture and profiting from each. Richard remained where he always was, the face of the original brand. The talent kept leaving and finding somewhere else to go. The broader business picture added more complexity to Rawlings's record. A civil lawsuit in 2018 from business partners at Gas Monkey Bar and Grill, the Dallas restaurant and music venue that had licensed his brand, involved claims worth roughly $6 million covering defamation and contract disputes. It settled in 2021, with the restaurant being sold and rebranded as Amplified, Rawlings taking his brand name with him. Not criminal, entirely civil. But another professional relationship ending in litigation rather than partnership, extending a pattern that his closest collaborators had been describing from the inside for years. Richard's personal life operated on a similarly turbulent timeline. He married his second wife, Suzanne, twice, first in 1999, divorced in 2009, remarried in 2015, and divorced again in 2019. He married Katerina Rawlings in 2020 and appears settled. The version of Richard Rawlings that existed through most of the Fast and Loud years was someone whose personal circumstances were as volatile as his professional ones, which may explain something about the environment inside Gas Monkey Garage, even if it doesn't excuse it. Aaron watched all of this up close. He had access to the full picture in a way that viewers never did. And when he finally started speaking openly about what he had seen, the person he pointed to was not an external enemy, not a rival, not someone who had come from outside to damage what they had built. It was the person sitting at the desk with his name on the door. But here is where the story gets more interesting than a simple grudge. Aaron's revelation was more precise than just naming a villain. So what did he ultimately say he was really angry about? And is it the same thing as hating someone? Something more devastating than hatred. The most interesting thing Aaron Kaufman ever said about Richard Rawlings was not the most dramatic thing. It was something quieter and more considered, delivered in the middle of an interview that Aaron had only agreed to do under pressure, that he and Richard saw the world very differently, and that the experience had taught him something about the gap between how he valued people and how the person he had worked alongside for 14 years valued them. That framing is not a personal attack. It's something more unsettling. It's the diagnosis of a fundamental incompatibility that had existed from the beginning and had taken over a decade to fully surface. Aaron wasn't saying Richard Rawlings was evil. He was saying they should never have been in the same room together professionally, and that the cost of discovering that slowly, over 14 years, while building cars on television, had been enormous. But the thing underneath all of that, the thing Aaron kept circling back to in every interview where he talked about it, was not the hours or the deadlines. It was the sense that, for Richard, the work was always in service of the performance of the work. The cars existed to create content. The builds existed to fill episodes. The mechanics existed to produce what the television schedule required. And for Aaron, who had given his entire professional identity to the craft itself, operating inside that logic for 14 years was a corrosion that money and fame could not compensate for. Hated is a strong word. Aaron has been careful not to use it publicly. What he has described ends up in the same place, through a more considered route. A man he worked beside for 14 years, who he realized somewhere in the middle of those years he did not know, did not share values with, and did not want to continue building things for. In the world of professional relationships, that is about as devastating as it gets. Not to find an enemy, but to look up one day and find a stranger. After leaving Gas Monkey Garage in late 2016, Aaron did the opposite of what the entertainment industry expected. He did not immediately chase a bigger platform. He did not get into a public war with Rawlings. He went quiet and went to work. Arclight Fabrication is the clearest possible statement of who Aaron Kaufman actually is when nobody is telling him what to build or when to deliver it. The shop focuses on custom Ford F-100 trucks, every generation from 1957 to 1979, producing aftermarket chassis components and full restomod builds for clients who want the kind of work that requires time to be done properly. He returned to Discovery Channel twice more, shifting gears with Aaron Kaufman in 2018, where he finally got to chase the ambitious racing builds he had always wanted to do, and Aaron needs a job in 2019. a 7-episode series that took him into mechanical worlds beyond automotive fabrication, military vehicles, cargo ships, Pikes Peak truck racing, and NASA. Both showed what Aaron was capable of when creative control was his, and confirmed that what had been missing from the Gas Monkey years was exactly that: creative control in the hands of the person doing the creating. His net worth is estimated at around $8 million, accumulated across his television years, his ArcLight business, and the event and industry appearances that naturally follow someone with his reputation. He has been with girlfriend Lauren Moore Knobb since 2013, and he is by every available measure exactly where he wants to be, which, given where he came from and what it cost him to get there, is the ending this story actually deserved. After 14 years inside someone else's vision, Aaron Kaufman finally built something that was entirely his own. So what does that say about how long people will stay in the wrong place when the money and the platform are compelling enough? And is the real story here about Richard Rawlings at all? Or is it about what it takes for someone to finally choose their craft over their career? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.